I watched it all on the security camera footage. Henry, my husband, crashed his car and died while rushing to Brooke's place, but the fatal truth that truly destroyed him was this: the child she claimed was hers. DNA proved it was someone else's baby. How did this entrepreneurial couple's $2.3 million business empire collapse overnight? It'll reveal how the other woman used one phone call to make him mistake the accelerator for the brake. The crucial recording, exposed at 3:27, is shocking. What's even more thrilling is that when I played the recording in the hospital room, where she admitted to a fraudulent pregnancy, Mrs. Miller and Brooke immediately brawled, pulling each other's hair, and my ultimate revenge. It sent chills down the spines of all cheaters. The price of a scoundrel's affair. My Henry was in a car accident. He was on his way to Brooke's place. The ironic thing was, the child Brooke was carrying wasn't his. Yet, that news was what drove him to his point of no return. Let's get a divorce. Henry Miller dropped the bombshell after dinner. I calmly asked, why? Give me a reason. He avoided my gaze, his words piercing me deeply. I've fallen for someone else, so, a bitter pang immediately struck my heart. He was no longer the poor college student from a humble background he once was. I thought, even if he didn't care about our past affection, he'd at least show some restraint for the sake of the company's interests. I never expected him to be so blunt. Who is it? I wasn't giving up. Even if we divorced, I needed to know. Who it is doesn't matter. What matters is I don't love you anymore. He didn't answer directly. Is it Brooke Davies? The moment he suggested divorce, I had a premonition. Henry scoffed. Since you already know, why bother asking? An indescribable discomfort welled up inside me. But I persisted. When did you two start? I knew Brooke Davies. I was the one who hired her for the company. In fact, after her interview, I had initially decided against her. Brooke was beautiful, but she was too alluring and manipulative. Clearly not the type to be well-behaved. Henry, however, insisted she was articulate, sharp-witted, and knew how to handle things, making her perfect for sales. He also said the company was in a growth phase and urgently needed talent to expand the market and boost performance. He stressed it repeatedly, so I didn't object further, and Brooke was hired. Later, she didn't disappoint. Brooke quickly secured several major deals and was promoted to sales manager. We saw each other almost every day at work. She knew I didn't care for her, so she was always polite. I kept her at a distance, and we maintained a peaceful coexistence. But like the saying goes, a rabbit doesn't eat the grass around its own nest. I never imagined she would get involved with Henry Miller. Henry couldn't meet my gaze. After a moment's hesitation, he stammered, 6 months ago. It all made sense to me. 6 months prior, my parents were hospitalized one after another, forcing me to set aside my company duties and go home to care for them. This gave those scoundrels the perfect opportunity. Indeed, flies don't bite a seamless egg. It just goes to show they were birds of a feather. I couldn't be bothered to argue with him further. A divorce is fine, but you leave with nothing, and I'll sign right now. Henry exploded. The company is my life's work. It has to stay with me. As for you, I'll compensate you with enough money for a comfortable life. I scoffed. Don't forget, I'm the legal owner of the company. I call the shots. Henry wasn't stupid. He knew what my words implied. He softened his tone. We need to reallocate the company's shares based on contribution. The previous arrangement was ill-considered. Since we were already at the point of divorce, why would I humor him? Impossible. Everything will be done according to the bylaws, and I absolutely will not give it away. I flatly refused. After we got married, he wanted to start a business but was short on cash. It was I who secretly mortgaged our marital home to fully support him. He swore he'd treat me well his entire life and never betray my profound kindness. So when registering the company, out of gratitude, he willingly put most of the shares in my name, keeping only a small portion for himself. We managed the company together, built the business, and things were going smoothly. Years passed, the company stabilized, and he forgot his promises. Not only did he change his mind and find the other woman, but he also wanted to fight me for our assets. That's not like me to just let it slide. H admitted to having an affair, so he had to pay the price. I wouldn't let anyone get away with it, especially not him. You can take the portion corresponding to your investment, but don't even think about taking a single penny more. I completely crushed his hopes. My attitude infuriated Henry, and he got angry too. You think this will stop me from divorcing you? Dream on, I sneered. You think it still wants you? Still try to keep you now? Aren't you overestimating yourself? You just want to use the shares to tie me down. What's the point of that? He still thought I was using the shares to threaten him. I found it utterly ridiculous. If you don't find it dirty, I certainly find it disgusting. I wish you'd just get out of here and stop being an eyesore. Henry twitched his lips. Aren't you afraid the company will go bankrupt in your hands? You know I've been managing the company all these years. I gave him a huge eye roll. Even if it all goes bankrupt, I'm willing. No one can tell me how to spend my own money. I didn't want to look at him for another second. Henry pondered for a moment, then backed down. All right, I take back what I said. We won't get a divorce. If you won't, I will. If you don't want to leave with nothing, then just wait for the lawsuit. I'll hire a lawyer to file for divorce, I said firmly. We'd already shown our true colors. Why pretend? Why keep a scoundrel like him around? Henry was about to say something else when his phone on the table rang inconveniently. I glanced at it. It was Brooke's phone number. Since things were already out in the open, Henry didn't hesitate and answered the call right in front of me. The room was quiet, and the voice from the other end of the phone clearly reached my ears. Honey, when are you coming over? I miss you, came Brooke's cloyingly sweet voice. Henry quickly glanced at me, then lowered his voice. Sweetheart, I'll be there in a bit. Wait for me. It was utterly disgusting. I was sickened to my stomach by those shameless scoundrels. Noticing my expression, Henry said a few more words and hung up. He turned back to me. Think carefully about the divorce. Without me at the company, you won't last long on your own. My networking skills might not be as good as his, but I wouldn't lose a verbal fight. So I immediately retorted, don't bother yourself with it. The world keeps turning without anyone. Henry, having been rebuffed, put on his coat, ready to leave. I won't be back tonight. Get some rest. His hypocrisy sickened me, and I couldn't help but yell sharply at him. Get out. And stay out. Without another word, Henry grabbed his car keys and turned to leave. I never imagined H'd end up in the hospital. I received the news about Henry in the middle of the night. The traffic police found me through his phone, saying the owner had been in a car accident and was sent to the ER. I had indeed just wished he would die, but I never expected karma to be so swift and potent. Henry was severely injured, unconscious, and in critical condition. Regardless, we were still married, and I couldn't just stand by. On the way to the hospital, I was filled with mixed emotions. If Henry hadn't gone to see Brooke, if he had just stayed home, this wouldn't have happened. This was all retribution. He brought it upon himself. In the ER, Henry was covered in blood, unconscious, and his condition was very dangerous. After I signed the forms, the traffic police retrieved the security camera footage from along the route. Under the high-definition lens, Henry's every move was clear. He left the house and immediately made a call, then drove while talking on the phone. I didn't know what he was discussing with the person on the other end, but it was clear Henry was very happy. His mood definitely wasn't affected by our argument. He hung up just seconds before the accident. It was too late to react. Henry ran a red light, and the oncoming truck had already started moving, making it impossible to avoid. Any experienced driver knows that when on the road, you yield speed, not your lane. At that critical moment, Henry's car didn't brake. Instead, it suddenly accelerated. The vehicles collided abruptly, and Henry's car was sent flying. He must have made a mistake in the rush, accidentally pressing the accelerator instead of the brake, causing the tragedy. Henry's phone showed that his last call before the accident was to Brooke. They truly were a pair of scoundrels. Not wasting even a moment, still flirting. No wonder Henry got into an accident. He didn't know his priorities. He deserved it. What goes around comes around. Back at the hospital, Mr. and Mrs. Miller had already arrived. The moment Mrs. Miller saw me, she spoke rudely. With something this serious happening, and Henry still lying here, what were you doing out there wasting time? Mrs. Miller was not an easy person to get along with. In the past, no matter how much she criticized me, I would just endure it, but today, I wasn't going to humor her. I immediately shot back. He deserved it. He brought it upon himself. Hearing this, Mrs. Miller casually rebuked me. How can you say that? I calmly replied, you certainly raised quite the son. Mrs. Miller stared at me, puzzled. I bluntly told her, Henry was having an affair. He was on the phone with that woman right before the accident, which caused the crash. Mrs. Miller didn't believe me. What are you talking about? Henry isn't like that. Don't slander my son. I sneered. Whether he's like that or not, you can ask him yourself when he wakes up. Just then, the doctor came out of the operating room and told me Henry's test results were in. The impact of the crash had severely damaged his brain nerves. Even if he regained consciousness, he would certainly be disabled, suffering from limited mobility and incontinence. Remembering his actions before the accident, I immediately decided to cease treatment. Why save him? Why waste medical resources? Let him go quietly, so he wouldn't harm anyone else in the future. Mrs. Miller, who had been standing nearby, overheard our conversation. She immediately lunged at me, yelling, "Olivia Roberts, you vicious woman! You're letting him die. You'll meet a terrible end." Ha! The troublemaker was here. I didn't need to deal with this mess. I told the doctor, "For Henry's matters, you can get her signature. She's the patient's mother." With nothing left to say, I turned and walked away without a greeting. Indeed, letting that heartless scoundrel leave this world so painlessly would have been far too easy for him. Even after walking quite a distance, I could still hear Mrs. Miller shouting loudly, "Just save him. My son owns a company. He's not short on money." I went straight to the company. Brooke Davies hadn't come to work. The HR department said she'd taken the morning off. Of course, with such a huge thing happening because of the scoundrel, she couldn't possibly be unaware. At the morning meeting, I publicly announced that Henry had been in a car accident and that I would be solely responsible for all company affairs. Amidst murmurs of surprise, I made another significant decision. Effective today, Brooke Davies was relieved of her position as sales manager. I immediately issued an official document, notifying her to complete the handover. Just as I expected, Brooke Davies soon stormed into my office. The moment she entered, she fumed at me. "You're settling a personal score." I looked at her expressionlessly. "So what? It's my company. I'm in charge." Brooke Davies opened her mouth but said nothing. I hinted, "You and I both know why Henry Miller is lying in the hospital. If anything happens to him, I won't need to intervene. Someone else will demand an explanation from you. Henry's mom would probably skin the culprit alive." Brooke Davies lost her previous assertiveness, and her tone softened. "Since things have come to this, I have nothing more to say. Do as you please. You're just a regular employee now. If you want to work, work. If not, pack your bags and leave immediately. The company doesn't keep idlers," I said without ceremony. The company policy stated that if an employee was unilaterally dismissed, 3 times the compensation had to be paid. I could afford it, but I didn't want to. I wasn't stupid enough to just hand money over to a woman like her. I wanted to wait until she felt she couldn't stand it anymore and resigned herself. Brooke Davies wasn't one to quit while she was ahead. She taunted me sarcastically. "You're always so blunt, completely unfeminine. No wonder Henry didn't like you." I smiled faintly. "I don't need anyone's approval, as long as I'm happy. Even by myself, I can live a wonderful life. I have the capability. I don't need to cling to any man to merely survive." Brooke Davies grew up in a single-parent home. Her mom didn't have a stable job and was a gambler, who spent time in card rooms and had affairs with many men, giving her a bad reputation among neighbors. To boost her sales, Brooke Davies used many unethical tactics at the company, for which she was criticized. The only reason she got involved with Henry Miller was because she was after his money, but the company's financial power was in my hands. Henry didn't have much money to spend, and large expenditures required my approval, seeing she couldn't take advantage. Brooke Davies stabbed me in the heart. "I'm the one Henry loves. He said I'm his true love." I scoffed at her. Men's words are often lies, especially sweet talk in bed. Most of it is empty words, not a single one sincere. Brooke Davies, having been suppressed by me, became furious. "I don't care if it's true or false. If he can't deliver on his promises to me, it'll ruin his reputation." I stared her down. "You're knowingly being the other woman, yet you're so self-righteous. Who gave you the audacity?" Brooke Davies scoffed. "So what if I'm the other woman? Henry said he'd openly marry me after he divorces you." I looked at her expressionlessly. "Oh really? Since you two are true love, and Henry's in the hospital now, why don't you go take care of him?" Brooke Davies took the bait. She asked me disbelievingly, "Really? You don't mind at all?" I just smiled without speaking. I didn't want to tell her how severely Henry was injured this time. I had instructed the doctors not to reveal the patient's long-term side effects to anyone, especially Brooke Davies, seeing that I wasn't pursuing her for her interference. Brooke Davies confidently swayed her hips and left. Watching her walk away, I secretly vowed, "Brooke Davies, don't gloat too soon. You'll have plenty to cry about later. Let's see how this plays out. I hadn't been back to the company for a long time. I was too busy to go to the hospital, of course. Every day I'd make a routine call to the doctor to ask about Henry's recovery. After all, we were still nominally married. Mrs. Miller called, her tone arrogant. Olivia Roberts, my son's medical expenses are gone. I wasn't flustered. If you need money, go ask Brooke Davies. Why are you calling me? Mrs. Miller pressed. You're his wife. Who else would I ask? I reminded her. Brooke Davies is your son's affair partner. She spent a lot of Henry's money. She constantly claims to love Henry, so it's not unreasonable to ask her for some medical expenses. Without waiting for Mrs. Miller to say anything else, I quickly hung up. I was no longer the person I used to be, letting my in-laws walk all over me. Henry had been lying in the hospital room for over 10 days. With no signs of waking up, I continued with my life methodically, completely unaffected. It wasn't that I was heartless, but rather, my heart was cold. If Henry had asked for a divorce even one day later, the outcome might have been different, of course. If it had been one day later, he might not have ended up in the hospital at all. It was all what he deserved. It was retribution. That evening, just after I got off work, I saw Mr. and Mrs. Miller waiting for me far away at the building entrance. You wouldn't be here unless you wanted something. I kept my distance and asked Mrs. Miller, are you looking for me? Mrs. Miller made all the decisions at home. Mr. Miller was weak-willed, couldn't make decisions. Mrs. Miller didn't mince words, getting straight to the point. Give me Henry's insurance payout. I understood immediately. They were here for money. The car Henry was driving was purchased in the company's name, not his personal name. I told her, back then, to avoid taxes, the vehicle was registered under the company, allowing insurance, fuel, and other expenses to be deducted before corporate income tax. Mrs. Miller acted childishly. I don't care. That money is what my son risked his life for. You have to give it to me. I explained. The car was totaled, and Henry was entirely at fault. The little bit of insurance money won't even cover the other party's repair costs. So how can I give you money? Mrs. Miller pondered for a moment, then continued with a cold face. Then you come tomorrow to handle Henry's discharge papers and take him home to recover. I flatly refused. I don't have time. If you have something, go find Brooke Davies. She should be eager for a chance to show off. So Henry would be eternally grateful when he woke up. Mrs. Miller's tone was particularly aggressive. Henry needs to recover at home, and Brooke Davies's place is too small and uncomfortable. I wasn't stupid. I argued logically. Brooke Davies's rental apartment is indeed inconvenient. Your place and Dad's are spacious. It would be perfectly fine for 4 people. Mrs. Miller wasn't happy and loudly protested. Henry has a wife. Why should he live with us old folks? I wasn't about to serve that faithless man. Henry has already proposed divorce to me. He definitely doesn't want to live at home. Mrs. Miller's expression grew even uglier. You're not divorced yet. You're still his wife, and it's your rightful duty to take care of him. I feigned innocence. He and Brooke Davies have been involved for a long time. It's more appropriate for that woman to take care of him. It would be beneficial for his recovery. Mr. Miller, standing by, couldn't get a word in and sighed helplessly, turning his head away. Mrs. Miller was quick-tongued and spoke without thinking. That woman doesn't look like someone who can take care of anyone. How can I trust my son to her? I was almost laughing at Mrs. Miller's absurdity. She was trying emotional blackmail. He asked for a divorce, and we're just waiting for the paperwork. How can I possibly take care of him calmly? Aren't you afraid I'd mistreat him? Mrs. Miller was relentless. I don't care about any of that. Henry needs constant care right now. Someone has to serve him. I frowned. You're Henry's parents. If something happened to him, shouldn't you be taking care of him? Mrs. Miller sharply rebuked me. We're old. It's hard enough to take care of ourselves. How could we have the energy to look after him? I didn't back down. Don't forget, the house you're living in now was bought by Henry. Mrs. Miller immediately became wary. That was my son's gift to us, his parents. Don't you dare think about that house. I wouldn't back down an inch. He bought the house, that's true. But as marital property, I have the right to control it. If you don't want to take care of Henry, then I'm sorry, but you won't be living in this house either. I'll sell it, and have more than enough money to hire a caregiver to serve him hand and foot. Seeing I was difficult to manipulate, Mrs. Miller finally lowered her stance. It's not that we can't take care of him, but you'll have to pay us a salary. I couldn't help but laugh. Well then, if you're living in my house, shouldn't I be charging you rent? Mrs. Miller rolled her eyes furiously. Our confrontation was head to head. She wasn't gaining much advantage. Mrs. Miller stopped talking. I waved my hand at her. If there's nothing else, I won't invite you upstairs, please leave. Mrs. Miller huffed and turned to walk away. Just you wait, I'm not the person I used to be. You won't manipulate me. Days passed like this. I hadn't expected Brooke Davies to proactively ask to meet me. I intentionally arrived half an hour late at the cafe. But Brooke Davies was still waiting there. During this period, she hadn't been working. She was likely busy currying favor with Henry. At that moment, however, her face was etched with exhaustion and helplessness. I sat down and got straight to the point. All right, what do you want? Brooke Davies bit her lip, as if gathering courage, before saying, give me a sum of money, and I'll give Henry back to you. I pretended not to hear clearly, deliberately asking, I don't understand what you mean, could you please explain more clearly? Brooke Davies cleared her throat. I said I'll give Henry back to you, as long as you give me some money. I smiled. You once said you two had true love. How long has it been? And you're already going to abandon him. Brooke Davies avoided my gaze, saying sheepishly, just tell me if you agree or not. I felt a pang of sadness for Henry. This was the woman Age been willing to divorce me for, his so-called true love. How much do you want? I looked at her composedly. Brooke Davies didn't answer directly. I know you don't want a divorce. You and Henry started the company together. You have feelings for each other. I simply smiled without speaking. Any feelings between us had long since been eroded. They vanished the moment he proposed divorce, the night he said he'd fallen for someone else. Seeing I said nothing, Brooke Davies' eyes darted across my face. I motioned for her to continue. Brooke Davies hesitated. My demands aren't high. Give me 500,000, and I'll leave him and never appear before him again. I repeated, syllable by syllable, 500,000. It was laughable. 500,000 was a lot. It could buy a small apartment where we were. Brooke Davies sensed the dissatisfaction in my tone and quickly revised. 400,000 is fine too. Either way, I'll take the money and leave immediately, looking at the desperate expression on her face. I didn't give a clear answer. Getting the money isn't out of the question. But there are some things I want to clarify. You must tell me the truth. Seeing I hadn't refused, she immediately exhaled in relief. What do you want to know? I won't hide anything. I said nonchalantly, tell me, why are you so eager to leave Henry Miller so quickly? She had, after all, repeatedly claimed their love was true. When this topic came up, Brooke Davies looked a little aggrieved, but due to the money issue, she had no choice but to be honest. She looked at me, her voice filled with helplessness. Did you know? Henry is awake. I wasn't surprised. I'd already received the news from the attending doctor. Isn't that what everyone hoped for? Brooke Davies rubbed her cheeks. Aren't you even a little curious about what he's like now? I smiled faintly. He's woken up. Shouldn't you be the happiest person? But you still want to leave him, which suggests he hasn't recovered well. Hearing this, Brooke Davies' expression immediately drooped, and she sighed helplessly. Henry is awake, but he's like an invalid. He can't stand and needs help with everything: eating, drinking, and using the bathroom. I already knew about this condition. It wasn't surprising at all. Brooke Davies continued. Having to serve him hand and foot for food and drink is one thing, but his temper has also changed. If anything isn't to his liking, he explodes, completely ignoring everyone. I remained silent, thinking to myself, this was just the beginning, and she already couldn't stand it and wanted to run. If this went on indefinitely, even a saint would turn into a monster. This morning, he complained the food wasn't good. His mom just said a couple of words to him, and Henry threw the bowl to the tile floor. Brooke Davies explained gloomily, I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, but just imagining it made me feel helpless. I had friends whose family members suffered from this illness and knew how difficult such patients could be to care for in their later stages. It was Mrs. Miller's doting love that blinded her to the consequences, still accusing me of being heartless. Brooke Davies sighed. Henry's intelligence is now worse than a child's. Taking care of him is pure torture. It all made sense to me. The doctor had said that even if such patients woke up, they would be like invalids, waiting to die, needing help with everything. The illness made their temper unpredictable and moody, causing them to be despised. The patients themselves lived without dignity, and those who cared for them put in a lot of effort but got no thanks. I had considered it very clearly then, intending to follow the doctor's advice and forego resuscitation. It was Mrs. Miller who stopped me and cursed me. I looked at Brooke Davies without a change in expression. So, you came to me today just to get money and leave? I didn't want to waste any more words on her. Brooke Davies openly admitted, "Yes, I didn't expect Henry to become like this after waking up. I don't want to ruin the rest of my life because of him. Everything was within my expectations, which was why I had encouraged her to take care of Henry in the first place." Adversity reveals true character. It's a touchstone and a mirror. Brooke Davies continued, "Henry's mom is also difficult to deal with. She's constantly critical of me, ever since we left the hospital. All the expenses have fallen on me. By the end, she dropped her head helplessly. Mrs. Miller was cunning and harsh. It would be a miracle if Brooke Davies could take advantage of her. There was one thing I had always been curious about. Before the accident, was Henry on the phone with you?" Brooke Davies nodded vigorously, immediately admitting, "Yes." They talked for over 10 minutes. Henry's abnormal excitement and the uncharacteristic mistake he made all piqued my curiosity. "What did you two talk about that day?" I suppressed my contempt. Brooke Davies hesitated, glancing at me, seeming to want to speak but holding back. I just watched her, waiting silently, not saying a word. Time seemed to stand still. Brooke Davies deliberated for a long time before slowly saying, "Henry told me that you probably wouldn't agree to a divorce and asked me to wait patiently for a while longer. That wasn't the answer I was looking for. He wouldn't have been so deliriously happy. He almost sent himself to a point of no return just for that." I cut her off. "Get to the point. Why was he so abnormally excited afterward?" On the footage, Henry was gesticulating wildly, as wild as if H won the lottery. Brooke Davies unconsciously shifted to the side, deliberately putting some distance between us. I had a bad feeling. Henry's accident was definitely related to their conversation, and just as I suspected, Brooke Davies's words made my jaw drop. I told him I was pregnant. It all clicked. No wonder Henry was in such a state. He was practically ecstatic, and because of that, he nearly lost his life. I looked at Brooke Davies. "Are you sure the child is Henry's?" Brooke Davies neither confirmed nor denied it. "Henry was thrilled when I told him I was pregnant and asked what I wanted to eat, saying H go buy it for me then the car accident happened." I couldn't help but chuckle humorlessly, feeling a silent pity for Henry. He truly was pathetic. Completely unaware H been cuckolded, yet still wanted to divorce me to marry her. Brooke Davies tightly gripped the straps of her handbag, her eyes warily fixed on me. Afraid I might lose my temper at any moment. I smiled gently, but my words were devastating. "But the child you're carrying isn't Henry's at all." Brooke Davies's eyes snapped open, and she looked at me in panic. "How do you know?" Realizing she'd let it slip, she tried to cover her mouth, but it was too late. I said calmly, "I had trouble getting pregnant before, so Henry and I specifically went to the hospital for tests. He suffered an injury as a child that caused his infertility. This was a blow to a man's pride, so I hadn't told him the truth, only saying it was my fault we couldn't conceive." It wasn't surprising that Henry, that idiot, lost his mind, tricked by Brooke Davies, and naturally assumed the child was his. Under my piercing gaze, Brooke Davies unconsciously shrank back. I looked at the crown of her head and said gravely, "Tell me, what's the truth about this child? How can you be so sure the child isn't Henry's?" she asked, struggling futilely. "I've had several checkups, and everything is normal. Henry and I were married for years and couldn't conceive. How long have you two been together? Do you think it's possible?" I stated righteously. Brooke Davies's face went from pale to even paler. I decided to be even more direct. "Do you need a pregnancy blood sample taken to do a DNA comparison with Henry?" Seeing my certainty, Brooke Davies finally admitted, "The child I'm carrying really isn't Henry's. I lied to him." I wasn't surprised at all. Brooke Davies was beautiful and always flashily dressed, often surrounded by men trying to impress her. She wasn't reserved herself. Playing along and freeloading was common for her. You play with fire, you get burned. It was only a matter of time. Seeing I said nothing, Brooke Davies continued, "One night I drank too much and was defiled by that bastard, Mr. Davis." She spoke with a look of indignation, and then, I asked unhurriedly, already knowing the answer. "He gave me money to abort the baby, insisting his wife must never find out." Brooke Davies sounded quite aggrieved. "I knew Mr. Davis. He was a pervert. His wife was incredibly fierce. She once chased him down the street with a kitchen knife just because he was flirting with younger women. So you found Henry Miller to be the scapegoat for your child," I said, hitting the nail on the head. Brooke Davies looked flustered. "I didn't know Henry was infertile." With most of the information gathered, I held up the voice recorder from my handbag. "Since that's the case, I won't be paying for the child in your womb. You can go find whoever you need to. I had been wary from the moment she contacted me, anticipating trouble, and it turned out my precautions were well-founded. Seeing my reaction, Brooke Davies's face suddenly changed, and she yelled at me, "Olivia Roberts, you're despicable." I stood up, glaring back, and raised my voice too. "Don't forget, Henry and I are still married. When you climbed into his bed, did you ever consider that I was his wife? You're just the other woman." Knowingly being the other woman, how good could you possibly be? Our voices were loud, and people around us began to cast curious glances our way. Brooke Davies's face was ashen, her lips trembling. "Olivia Roberts, you win." I smiled openly. "Oh, and I forgot to tell you, you haven't been working for the past half-month, so you won't get a single penny in salary." Brooke Davies was incensed with shame. "Didn't you tell me to take care of Henry? Am I supposed to be free labor?" I shrugged at her. "You volunteered. I didn't force you, nor did I say I'd pay you." Under everyone's watchful eyes, Brooke Davies gritted her teeth in anger, yet was utterly helpless. "Ha! You're no match for me." I left the cafe. It was still early. It was time to go see Henry. It was afternoon, and Mr. and Mrs. Miller were both at home. When they saw me, Mr. Miller greeted me proactively. Mrs. Miller had lost her previous arrogance and, for the first time ever, poured me a glass of water. They were cautious and wary, seemingly trying to flatter and curry favor. Indeed, having lost Henry, their pillar of support, the entire family now depended on me, so how dared they show me any disrespect? Henry was in his wheelchair, staring at me since I entered the room. I walked over and carefully observed him. The familiar face I once knew was gone, replaced by a pale countenance that showed he had barely survived. At this moment, facing him in such a state, I didn't seem to hate him as much as I once did. He was wrong first, but he had already received his punishment from above. Philosophers tell us never to punish ourselves for others' mistakes. It's simply not worth it. Henry stared at me for a while, then said methodically, "I recognize you, Mr. Miller." Explained that ever since Henry regained consciousness, his speech hadn't been as fluent as before, and his memory wasn't fully intact. I smiled too, teasing Henry Miller. "So, do you remember who I am?" He childishly pointed at me and slowly said, "You're my wife, Olivia Roberts." "You forgot. You already asked me for a divorce. I'm not your wife anymore." I seized the opportunity to needle him. "I'm a woman who believes in an eye for an eye, really." "But I don't remember that." He furrowed his brow, as if struggling to recall. Mrs. Miller stood by, carefully watching my every move. I had no desire to engage with her. I took the voice recorder out of my bag, turned it on, and placed it next to Henry Miller. "Listen carefully to what's on here. It should be useful to you," I said. After all we'd been through as a couple, this was the only way I could help him now. What I played was the conversation between Brooke Davies and me at the cafe. Mrs. Miller had only listened for a moment before she jumped up. "I knew it. This woman is not an easygoing person. I never thought she'd be so shameless." I completely ignored her words, not wanting to pollute my ears. Just then, as if on cue, the room door opened from the outside, and Brooke Davies walked in. When she saw me, she immediately tensed up, her eyes quickly scanning everyone. She asked in a low voice, "Why are you here?" Before I could speak, Mrs. Miller rushed forward. She grabbed Brooke Davies's hair and started cursing. "You hussy. You have someone else's bastard child and you still want to latch onto my son? Have you no shame?" Brooke Davies clutched her head with both hands, tears and snot streaming down her face, looking utterly miserable. Mrs. Miller was relentless. "You jinx. You almost killed my son. Don't expect to have an easy life from now on. You'll serve him hand and foot for my son, and don't even think about running off with any money." Brooke Davies didn't back down from the verbal attack. "Old hag, I've had enough of you these past few days, making a pregnant woman serve your whole family, and you're still so picky." Mrs. Miller's voice was several decibels louder. "He deserved it. You're the one who caused this to my son. You can work like a dog, and it wouldn't be enough." The two women hurled insults at each other, their vile language unbearable to listen to. Henry Miller sat on the side, listening and watching, wanting to intervene but unable to move, burning with impatience. Mrs. Miller pulled and tugged with both hands, while Brooke Davies dodged and weaved. The two women were tangled together, with the women fighting. Mr. Miller couldn't take sides, so he simply didn't help either and went outside. I didn't want to help anyone either. I just stood by, watching the spectacle. They're tearing each other apart, All the grievances I had suffered vanished in that moment, replaced by a sense of schadenfreude. Mrs. Miller was ruthless, but Brooke Davies was no pushover. Both women had scratches and bruises on their faces. They were tugging at each other's hair, neither willing to let go, only exchanging verbal blows. Just then, Henry Miller, who was sitting in his wheelchair, slowly began to slide down for some unknown reason. Henry Miller. I had a bad feeling and reached out to pull him up, but it was too late. Henry Miller fell stiffly onto the tile floor, his eyes tightly shut, white foam at the corners of his mouth. My cry made the two struggling women temporarily stop. They both rushed over. What followed was chaos. This time, Henry Miller wasn't so lucky. By the time he was taken to the hospital, he no longer had any vital signs. The doctor confirmed that Henry Miller had died. He had just recovered from a serious illness. His body was already fragile, and there was a narrow spot in a blood vessel in his brain. Mrs. Miller and Brooke Davies' tearing each other apart and cursing caused him to be overcome with rage, and he simply passed away without being able to catch his breath. Mrs. Miller sat in front of the heir, wailing, "My son." It was heartbreaking to see a parent outliving their child. Seeing that things had gone wrong, Brooke Davies had already fled. A perfectly good family just fell apart like that. I stood in the hallway, my heart filled with mixed emotions. Henry Miller, if you're looking down from above, do you have any regrets? If you hadn't had an affair, none of this would have happened, and you wouldn't have passed away too soon. Don't you think the price you paid for so-called true love was truly steep? My answer was Mrs. Miller's mournful wails, rising and falling.